It's where purchase decisions are made. And unlike many media channels that reach consumers early in the journey, the mall environment allows us to speak to the consumer at the end of that particular journey, when the consumer is in a buying mindset and close to making a purchase.
Welcome to today's episode of Beyond the Billboard. We are so excited to get into our episode today with one of our sponsors, Mall Ads. We are joined today by John Faia, who is the Director of Mall Ads and the General Manager of Street Network. Thank you so much for joining us today, John.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a wonderful thing that you are doing for the industry from an out-of-home point of view.
Thank you so much for the wishes. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing the power of mall media. I have always loved the mall space for bringing just the funnest campaigns to life. It's such a different environment. It feels like an environment that you can control some of the elements, which means you can have more fun with your campaigns in that space. And we're really excited to get into today's episode discussing everything around mall media. And I wanted to ask you to kick us into the episode from your perspective. What does the mall environment offer brands and advertisers, and what are the benefits of advertising in the mall space?
Well, I think first, before I answer that question, maybe I should give you a background of malls in South Africa. We definitely lead when it comes internationally to our malls and how we build them, and the industry itself is incredibly financially sound and set up by really, really great organizations in the private sector. So in terms of malls in South Africa, and I think I'm going to give you some interesting stats that you may know or may not know. But I think, just to start off, malls play a crucial role in South Africa's economy. They contribute over 1.4 trillion in retail sales a year. I don't know if you know this, but we ranked 6th in the world behind the US and China with the most malls per square kilometer. I'd love to see that stat per capita. I think we'd probably be higher on that list. If you look at overall in South Africa, we got 2,000 malls nationally, 600 of them, no surprise, concentrated in Gauteng, economic engine of the country. The size of our retail market, if you look at the GLA square meterage, is 23 million meters of gross leasable area space. Our offering that we provide you is in the non-GLA environment, so it's in the non-gross leasable area space. And that's where advertisers get the best opportunity to be able to talk to brands in this environment. I think also important to note, this retail sector contributes 12% to the national GDP, and it employs 20% of the country's workforce. So just over 3.3 million people, roughly. So getting back to why malls are so powerful, and I think if you understand where we've been ranked nationally, you understand one thing, that we have a massive mall culture in this country. We love shopping. We love getting into our cars, driving to far destinations, spending the whole day there. And I think just to answer the question in terms why malls remain powerful is that they are where the spending happens inside our environments. It's where purchase decisions are made. And unlike many media channels that reach consumers early in the journey, the mall environment allows us to speak to the consumer at the end of that particular journey, when the consumer is in a buying mindset and close to making a purchase.
When people are going to malls, they're also going there for this long experience, whether it's I'm going to go for a meal and then I'm going to go see a movie and then I'm going to do some shopping. So it is this longer dwell time that you have of capturing this audience. And what this leads me to speak about is there's been this big shift within the industry and within media about not just looking at reach anymore, not just your reach and frequency media metrics, not just standard media metrics, but looking at how the medium is garnering attention. And we know that out of home as a medium really speaks well into that attention metric. But what I think is even better is how mall media speaks into that attention metric, because you've got this longer dwell time of capturing these audiences. And I wanted to ask you now, John, have you seen that come through in any of the data that you guys have access to? Or how have you seen mall media playing into that attention metric? But now the shift to attention metrics, I think, plays quite strongly for the mall media space and positioning. And I'd love to hear your take on all of this.
Look, absolutely. I mean, mall media is primed to allow for the attention metrics that we're moving towards, that shift in the industry. It's an environment that is naturally well positioned for attention metrics, which I think is the point you were making earlier. Shoppers spend meaningful time in these environments and they encounter multiple messages during a particular visit. So it's unlike channels that can be skipped and ignored. You can't ignore mall media. You can't skip it. It's happening in real time while we're shopping, while we're making a purchasing decision, where shoppers are actively moving, browsing, and making decisions. So that creates stronger opportunities for brands, for recall, for consideration, store visitation, depending on what that brand's objective is. But as advertisers look beyond reach and focus more on the engagement and outcomes, mall media offers a highly attentive audience in a premium purchase-orientated environment. So it is absolutely well placed for metrics. There's quite a few data stats that we've come about that we've noticed in terms of, what does it tell us about this environment? So there's 4 things I can share with you. The first are 2 really cool trends. So the one trend, and it's come through a lot in our research and maps and so forth, is that people are still making purchasing decisions at the point of sale. And that's not going to change for a long time. The second thing that is really exciting is that shoppers move in predictable pathways. So that's how they build malls. Malls are built with anchor tenants on either side to make sure the shopper's able to walk through that entire environment and have a look at all these other retail offerings. And then we talk to the shopper journey, essentially. So, if we understand the shopper journey, you'll understand that our screens are placed slap bang at the shopper's journey, and it's repetitive. So they don't lose a screen. As they're walking, the screens are synchronized. So you're not losing that message as you're walking through, moving from one environment to the other. Going back to the predictable pathways, that allows us to be able to understand, if you understand that 73% of the 27.4 million shoppers that visited malls in the past 4 weeks went and bought clothing and food and groceries, you'll actually understand that there's insights on how we need to talk to these people and where we can capture them best in terms of those particular environments. We've started with ProTrack, but ultimately that is informing a lot of our VAX, which is our new form of measurement, which is helping us because it's taking us to a level where malls have never been.
You've painted that picture of how the advertising is included, what these spaces mean, and also importantly, now we can have measurement in the mall environment. So, relying on foot counts is part of the metric that's available. It's similar to in the airport space. You rely on ticket sales, or in the train station space. So I think that it's part of the metrics, but I love that Provantage have invested in their ProTrack system, which takes it a step further, aligns it to the VAC. We've spoken a lot on this podcast before around measurement. Media people, media planners love to have everything be the same on the schedule. It makes it easy for the client to compare what is the measurement when everything is the VAC, or it's easier to compare. So I love that you guys have introduced that into the mall space. And I think while we are on the topic, can you share with us what is Provantage offering in the measurement space? What is the ProTrack data and how's it being used in the malls?
What we are able to measure, which we were never able to measure prior, and this is why it's so innovative and pioneering. Ultimately, what it provides is we're able to understand foot traffic on a daily, hourly basis, passing those sensors that we've put in. We're able to understand which shoppers are stopping at the closest cone of visibility in terms of our VAC measurement. These shoppers are actually looking at the screens, and I think that was our biggest challenge. And one of the reasons why ProTrack, we needed it in our business so desperately. So we've got some landlords in our environment that actually use our data on a monthly basis religiously. And some of them are more advanced in terms of data capturing within malls and measurability of movement. So they can do heat maps. Their Wi-Fi works off all their camera systems. And ultimately, if we're able to get to a point where we can work collectively with all these partners, including the retailers, we could build something amazing. But back to VAC and what it does for us. So it allows us to measure movement, foot traffic. We can tell you which hours of the day the mall is the busiest or the quietest from a foot traffic point of view. And most importantly, with this, before we were never able to offer advertisers reach, frequency, impact. We can now do that. we can now offer CPMs. CPMs, which, by the way, are more affordable than most out-of-home mediums when it comes to more retail, which is a really good value add for advertisers wanting to be in the environment. The other thing to also notice and to also be aware of is that there is a lot of data we're picking up, and what we're noticing on a monthly basis is that there's usually a bit of a drop. It's been a weak retail month, July, so the VAX will register at 39 million, whereas last month they registered at 42 million. Yes, that is our monthly audience. It's 40 million plus a month that we can offer brands and advertisers in this environment.
For me, I'm so glad that you've raised, like, if there's this combination of data sets working together, it can really make it even more powerful. And I also think it's still important to underscore the fact that malls now has measurement like reach and frequency and VAX and can be comparable against other mediums. So I think that's really important to just underscore. That's a big movement for mall media in the market. But
Yes.
I think it can now elevate and optimize by adding some of this other type of data sets within the mall environment. I just want to circle back to that piece around audience behavior, right, and how people behave within the mall space. And if there's key attitudes or behavioral insights that you're able to share. You touched on something early on when you spoke about, I think it was a stat around 75% of this audience is doing their clothing shopping, their grocery shopping at these mall environments. But perhaps there's some other insights with regards to behaviors, attitudes with this consumer audiences based in the mall space at that time. I'm not sure if there's anything like that you guys have looked into. And then I had another actual part 2 question around what have you seen with regards to seasonality? If there's anything to share, I found that quite interesting to see if there's anything that you've kind of come up in your data around that.
Okay, so just the first part on behavior, I don't have any stats on hand, but what I can tell you is obviously the behavior around the mid-market segment, the mid to low, because that's really where we focus our SEM, and that's where our portfolio sits. And you're sitting with a shopper that probably sits with more than one job, if they're male, in that environment. They always want to buy the best brands, the best quality. They're happy to wait for lay-by. So they'll do the lay-by purchase, happy to wait for it, as long as it's what they envisage they would buy in terms of value. So it's a very value-conscious market. These are young people, most of them. They've got families. So, behavior in mall will obviously be, if you're buying staple goods, it's going to be at the best value, best price. It is South Africa's biggest spenders. The biggest shoppers sit in this particular segment. And often enough, those malls are absolutely not built without a partnership with the community. So they're woven in the fabric of the community. Just to go back, the second question, they do perform incredibly well seasonally. Obviously, Christmas period is the highest. But you move out of Christmas, you go straight into back to school. Out of back to school, it's Easter, because we've created these retail calendars and we try and drive them. So Easter, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, all of those particular events, Youth Day. So they're things that we cotton onto from a content point of view on Mall TV to make it more relevant for the particular viewer. But other than that, it's the usual traditional sort of peaks and troughs that create those retail booms. Ultimately, if you look at the retail calendar, what we refer to it as, and these particular dates, there's absolutely peak periods. We see it in our advertising activity as well. Let's talk about September. Okay. The 1st of September is the start of most mobile companies' summer campaigns. And they compete with each other. Who's going to launch it first? And, in malls, we get a bit of that spend ultimately because it's linked to retail. But even that, we see a nice jump in September. So there is, in the latter part of the year, the spend is higher than what it is in the first quarter of the year. Absolutely.
John, I wonder if you could share with us around the footprint of the Provantage mall offering for mall ads. I think for anyone who's listening who's not familiar, how many screens you have, what areas you operate in, could you give us some information around the network?
The Mall Ads Network is one of South Africa's largest mall media platforms. It reaches millions of shoppers across premium retail destinations nationwide. And our footprint spans super regional, community malls, regional malls, allowing brands to engage with consumers across different income groups, lifestyle and geographic markets. And I think that's probably one of the most powerful offerings that we could have actually put together, was that diverse audience that we can offer. We have pioneered and created segment within this particular space. In the past, there were not a lot of mall media offerings in the mid to low SEM segment. We've come in and we've taken it over. We've built a network of 46 shopping centers across 9 provinces in the country. Mall TV consists of 36 of those malls, and Mall Vision, our large 3x6 format screens, consist of 12 of those shopping centers in terms of that full count of 46. And ultimately, we offer VACs. If you look at Mall TV, the VAC offering there is 40 million VACs a month, which is a pretty huge audience. And then in the Mall Vision VACs, we sit at an audience of 2.7 million with those 12 screens. And I think what makes the network especially valuable is that we can reach consumers at the point of purchase during that last retail mile of interaction with the retail environment.
The Mall, the heart of any community in South Africa. A destination no longer dedicated to shopping, but a place where friends and families go for an experience. This is the rhythm of retail. What if we could put your brand in front of them? With Africa's largest digital mall network at your disposal, you can reach millions of SA's most powerful shoppers when it matters most. Reach them with Mall TV.
Thank you for sharing that, John. And just for our audience, just to clarify, you are selling it as a slot within a loop across your digital out of home networks. So if you have creative that's going onto your roadside digital out of home and you're wanting to kind of get that, close the loop on your consumer journey at the point of sale where the purchase decisions are made, you can obviously tie that creative in within your adjusted to spec, but within the mall ads TV. Am I correct, John?
Absolutely. Look, we were selling the traditional 30-second. A lot of clients cottoned on to the fact that if they'd give us 10-seconders, they'd get more frequency. And that's really, when you're in a retail environment, repetition frequency is what you're after. The habitual movement of our shoppers, specifically in the mid to low SEM, they visit the mall often because it's en route from their transit point of view. But you're 100% correct. It is in loops. We have great content interspersed with Mall TV as a channel, and that's to ensure that there isn't that advertiser fatigue. There's more content going on. But our Mall Vision, our large 3x6 screens, they don't have content interspersed like news and the weather and so forth. That's just straight advertising with obviously the frequency offered on that.
I think it's fantastic that you've got the content piece on the Mall TV. I think that's really great. And I think that also just allows the audience to be able to actually get information with regards to news, sport, etc., weather. But what I wanted to ask now is, do you find on your Mall TV in particular, probably not your bigger 3x6, but your Mall TV, do you find a lot of price product push? Because obviously you don't see a lot of price product out in the outdoor side, but in your environment it plays actually quite well because it's at point of purchase. Do you see a lot of that price product push? I feel like Mall ads kind of replaces that, or Mall TV replaces that, in the instance that you can push that price product on a weekly basis, and because of the agility and flexibility of it being digital out of home, you can adapt and change as you need to. So if you were a Pick and Pay or Checkers, you can update it based on the specials that you're running in store at that time. Do you find that you're getting a lot of that type of content on your Mall network versus getting more of that like brand saliency push type content?
So, yeah, I mean, right now it's mostly brand saliency, a lot of competitions, promotions, but very few price and product, which is very sad. I'm so glad you've touched on this because it's really something I would like to talk about. I think it's something that brands are missing massively. The fact that our digital networks they follow the shopper journey, they're repetitive, they're outside anchor tenants, they're the perfect environments for people to do adverts with price and product. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of that activity currently. We are talking to some bigger retailers to see if they'll come on board. And you're right, it's the natural extension of the printed broadsheet onto a digital screen. And it really is. We're able to do it. We're able to offer the frequency. We're able to offer the day parting. We're able to offer when you want to flight the ad, at what time of the morning, or do you only want to do it on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when the malls are the fullest? Those type of nuances we can offer, and we can tailor make to these particular campaigns.
I actually just want to build onto that creative piece. Something that I also wish we were seeing more often in the mall space is you have a captive audience with dwell time at pedestrian level engagement a lot of the time. I wish that brands would use that advantage to relay some of their more complex messaging in those environments, not specifically on roadside. So, for me, best practice would be from a roadside perspective to have slightly different artwork than what the message you're flighting in the malls, where you do have time for people to actually absorb more messaging. You can give some mechanics if there's a mechanic required for what you're advertising. I think that often you see the same messaging that's put on roadside put into the mall environment. And I think there's a missed opportunity there around the strategic value of the mall environment, is that you are in a different space, in a different mindset. You've got more dwell time than you would if you were driving past something. I don't think enough brands are doing that well, and actually using that benefit of being in the specific mall environment. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you, Olivia. I think if people were going to take their, the communication in store would work better on the mall TV screen than the billboard communication, at the very least. And that's also, there's a disparate link there as well. I think they sit with different budgets. It's different planning teams that look at these spend. And, ideally, we'd like to get a lot closer to understanding how the retail environment works, although a lot of that income is spent in store. The opportunity exists to take some of that budget and spend it on more TV, driving the feet into store, because your clutter exists in store, doesn't really exist in our common environments. There we own that, and you as a brand can own that quite nicely. It's just the tenant signage, and then it's our screens and our static options that we have available. So if you take advantage of that as a brand, and you understand that you're at the last mile, the last retail mile to influence a purchase decision, you'd be clever to drive that frequency quite high, because when you get into that store environment, it's just clutter. The silver bullet is to actually merge the three together. So take your out of home in billboard, take your mall TV, and take your in store, and make sure that you've created a seamless journey.
As we head towards our close, I wanted to ask, we've chatted about creativity, measurement, the scale of the mall landscape, the power behind the people who are visiting the malls, the buying power. I wanted to ask you, looking forward to the future, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for brands in the mall environment? What's exciting you about what's coming up, or what you're seeing to start change in that environment?
Sure. I think, look, what excites me the most is probably the opportunity to combine physical retail environment with digital technology and data. Malls remain one of the most powerful places to engage consumers when they're actively considering a purchase. And I think the biggest opportunities lie in immersive brand experiences, something we don't do very well in this country, unfortunately, and bridging that gap, as I've said earlier, between all those data sets and creating that ecosystem. But the future of mall media is about creating meaningful engagement that captures attention and drives measurable business metrics. I think also something that we do need to mention, because we talk about it, we understand that it's our business, but maybe our audiences don't really know it very well, and that's programmatic. So programmatic, to date, we've been able to book, big digital screens and so forth, and we've done a lot of work in-house at the moment to get programmatic ready on our digital place-based networks. So that particular network will be programmatically ready quite soon. You talk about the future. Programmatic is absolutely in the center of that future that we see, and we'd obviously love to see some income being generated and some interest being taken up on that particular platform as well.
We were touching on, inserts or broadsheets, and we're talking about that price product push. And with the network becoming programmatically enabled, that will allow a lot of that price product push kind of buys through DSPs, right? And I'm wondering, with this enablement, if we're going to see that now unlock. So I think that's going to be quite interesting to see. And then I also wonder if, with the programmatic enablement, if we're going to see more of that in-store budget. As you were saying, that in-store budget is often housed separately. And it's not, it's not usually with the ATL media budget. And I wonder if we're going to see that budget start to unlock, through the programmatic buying of the mall, just out of home and mall networks. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what that unlocks with this programmatic enablement. And if these conversations we've been talking about, if that's going to shift now as we move forward. And I love that you tacked on immersive experiences, because it's one of the reasons Liv and I absolutely love the mall space. Yes, yes, because it's capturing audiences and it captures attention, and there's so much that you can do in the space, but particularly because of how people gather within the mall spaces, and it allows these spaces to explore experiences and create experiences for audiences in these spaces, whether it's gamification, like if we look at the social screen Heineken campaign, I think that was absolutely amazing. AI facial recognition technology type campaigns, which really get, the consumers to engage with the screen. I think there's a lot more of that space to play in the mall space for us as a market. I think there's definitely a lot more that we can expand on there in the future when it comes to immersive experience. I'd love to just hand it to Liv if there's anything you wanted to build on the immersive experiences as we close.
So as a closing point, I think the mall environment just offers this amazing environment to do. Chrissy and I've often spoke about gamification, these experiences. One local example that really stood out for me was what Stork did with their From the Country case study, where they had actually set up a screen in one of the piazzas of Mall of Africa. And they had such an amazing case study that was put together and campaign where people were interacting with the screen and ordering something to eat. And then in the video, the guy goes and gets the items and the sandwiches, whatever somebody's ordered from the country, and brings them back. And what the people in the mall are experiencing is you see and hear this motorbike coming with this guy on the back with the sandwich delivered to the people. So there was this stunt that they performed with actually live ordering through the billboard or through the digital screen. And then the product arrived, and you can see people are just so much enjoying that experience. I think, as you said, people go to the mall, they expect certain things, they expect to see media, they expect to be shopping, they expect to be informed. But then if they are also delighted in a way by something that they've experienced, I think it really just leaves people with this entertainment or shoppingtainment moment that they've had at the mall too. So that's my nuggets I'm going to leave us with, is that I think more brands should be having more fun in the mall space. And it really does lend itself to do some of the executions. Often in South Africa, we speak of that, we don't have digital bus shelters in those environments. And we see some campaigns are coming to life with those in other markets. But the mall space offers everything that you see in the other markets that are using digital on roadside at pedestrian level. The mall environment brings that all to the table. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in that space too. So yeah, I really wanted to thank you, John, for joining us, for sharing all of your knowledge with us. It's been fascinating to sit down with you. And I feel like we've also got an understanding of the front clients or customer facing side of the malls, as well as the back end with the landlord requirements, and also understanding how mall ads have established themselves in the malls and why. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us. It's been great to have you with us today.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you to the sponsor of today's episode. Your support helps make Beyond the Billboard possible and helps us to bring you the first and only out-of-home podcast in South Africa.
Thanks for joining us today to go beyond the billboard. Subscribe to our podcast to ensure you don't miss out on our exciting content.
Join us again to go beyond the billboard.
1, 2,